Well, the Madlanga Commission of Inquiry faced further delays this week as proceedings were abruptly adjourned here and there. A key witness, a crime intelligence officer, was unable to testify after falling ill, prompting frustration from evidence leaders who noted that it was not the first time a witness had been unavailable for health reasons. The commission, which is investigating allegations of corruption and political interference in the country's criminal justice system, was adjourned by Chairperson Mbuyiseli Madlanga until Thursday. This comes as other testimonies continue to send shockwaves through the system. This week, the suspended Eguleni Human Resources head, Gxasheka, returned to the stand, denying allegations that she protected suspended Deputy Police Chief Julius Mkhwanazi from disciplinary action. Gxasheka testified that she feared for her life after signing Mkhwanazi's suspension letter. For more on that and other aspects that came through, I'm joined now by IRS forensic investigators. That's Chad Thomas from IRS Forensic Investigators. Good afternoon to you, Chad, and thank you for your time. Before we get into our conversation, Chad, I think let's start with a sound clip from the testimony of General Lt-Gen Sibiya, describing how he came to meet certain individuals, and Mr. Mochumi that comes into the picture, and other players that he's been questioned about at the commission. So let's listen to that, and then I'll pick up with Chad in a moment.
I met Mr. Msibi at that time, and then I started then meeting with Mr. Mutsumi. Mr. Mutsumi, I met twice or thrice. And why I say twice or thrice? Twice I met him at this Inanda Hotel. That's when we were discussing the issues of the taxi issues. The last one is another one where I met him now to is after I was also now working on these allegations that kept on coming about Mr. Matlala, that Mr. Matlala could be involved in the Mr. Boshoha's matter. I will address
kidnapping. Man? Oh, matter. I'm sorry.
Yes.
I'm very sorry, General.
Yes. So,
I thought you said murder.
So maybe I'll address that at that time. But this is how I met Mr. Steve.
All right, let's pick up with Chad Thomas. Chad, so the characters keep on, the number of characters is growing. So you will have now new names that are being added. But I suppose the intention of it all is to triangulate, investigate relationships that are proper and improper, that certain police officials may or may not have had with players who are outside of the SAPS, but whose character and actions is being questioned. How much light did General Lt-Gen Sibiya's testimony shed by way of us understanding how some officials relate with these characters, some of whom are accused of wrongdoing?
It was a very interesting week. A lot of what came from Sabir at some parts seemed to be incoherent. At other stages, he went on the attack, claiming that he felt victimized by the evidence leader and by the way in which the commission was conducting itself in terms of the way questions were being posed to him and evidence was being led. But what we did see was a concession on his part that he was close to Witness F. Witness F has been identified as being the so-called bagman and go-between between Sabir and other characters, including, I think, Katie Molefe, Vusikat Matlala, and others. The concession that there were these meetings and it was as a result of this investigation to Gxasheka is very interesting, because the Gxasheka case is a case that still hangs over a lot of people's heads, and we're still looking for justice in this particular matter. The family have never recovered a body. They don't know whatever happened. They believe that the kidnapping has most probably resulted in the death of Jerry. And it's a very sad predicament that we find ourselves in, hearing his name raised almost arbitrarily. But we're beginning to now see that perhaps it's deflection to say, well, I was engaging with these people in my position as the head of detection services to perhaps get clarity on the Gxasheka case. But all in all, myself and a lot of analysts agree that the testimony was quite incoherent at times this week from Sabir.
And how much did we glean by way of detail, Chad, of due and undue benefits from various players to Shadrach Sibiya, General Sibiya, in that, I mean, I remember, I think it must have been one of the first 2 days of him on the stand where a lot of time was spent on the question of whether or not impalas were delivered at his home and whether or not he's got game on at his home and whether that game is the same as the impalas that have been mentioned by other witnesses, including Vusumuzi Ketmatlala in a different forum, as well as questions about how he affords his lifestyle, because it became something of a lifestyle audit. But did it yield anything that is interesting, that moved us forward slightly in understanding the flow of benefits or otherwise?
So some standout moments for me was when he decided to state that perhaps there had been some or other artificial intelligence engineering of messages and pictures when it came to the fact that there was this corroboration of sorts where witness F had been contacted regarding the delivery of these impalas from Vusi Ketmatlala to Sabir. And of course, he's been at great pains to deny there being any gratuity or any relationship. What was also very interesting that came out of this was when they were asking about cash payments that were made or transfers that were made, and he stated that he had a number of cash businesses, the one of which is in Rustenburg, where he built a complex of rooms for people that work in the area on the mines and that they get paid in cash. He spoke about having an Airbnb. He spoke about having an Uber. He spoke about having a livestock business, an eggs business. And of course, for us that work in the AML arena, those are all red flags. The minute you start hearing about all these cash businesses popping up, you start getting a bit worried. And of course, we have to find out what the values were. We weren't, as the public, taken into the confidence of the commission. The amounts that he was making from these cash businesses were written on a piece of paper, then given to the evidence leader, and from the evidence leader, it was passed on to the commissioners themselves. So it's very interesting, and I'm sure that the Financial Intelligence Center and SARS will be taking an interest in these cash businesses as well.
The last aspect I want to pull at in relation to Shadrach Sibiya, there's clearly no love lost between him and General Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi, right? I mean, this constant reference and juxtaposition and saying, you know, this is the only provincial commissioner who is able to have a social media presence and a social media profile, etc. And even at some point, the complaint, you mentioned him complaining about how he is being treated in the commission, at some point saying that the evidence leader speaks as if she's the representative, legal representative of General Mkhwanazi. There's no love lost between the two men.
We need to understand something, that this Commission of Inquiry is into the allegations made by General Mkhwanazi. So, of course, General Mkhwanazi is front and center in all of this. General Mkhwanazi isn't just a provincial commissioner. He's an ex-acting national commissioner. He's held the rank of Lieutenant General for a very long time, and he was actually appointed to that rank at a very young age. He's also completed the full cycle to qualify as an operator within the Special Task Force. So, of course, he's going to be looked upon in reverence by a lot of people because of who he is, because of what he achieved at a very young age, taking up the role of acting commissioner during a very turbulent time in 2012. And of course, he's the reason why we're having this Commission of Inquiry as well as the parallel ad hoc committee in Parliament. It's because of the presser of July 6. So personal issues aside, the fact remains we wouldn't be having this inquiry, wouldn't be digging so deep if it wasn't for the fact that Mkhwanazi came forward.
All right, I want us to take a listen to a sound clip of Linda Gxasheka. This is the suspended human resources head in the city of Eguleni, who also was one of the witnesses that testified this week. Take a listen to how she talks about the pressure that she says she was under while performing her tasks.
I was encountered with challenges from the time I was acting in the labor relations space. One of the matters, there's about four I'll mention, I won't mention a lot, there's a lot. It was the Germiston Pension Fund. Commissioners, you might know about this. We had lockdown issues, Commissioner Khumalo. And at that time, Eguleni was expected to pay more than 100 million for the pension not performing. And the changes to that pension fund were done prior to 1994, and it was locked. They performed, I think it performed and performed, then around 2020, I think could have been during COVID time, they said, Eguleni, surprise for you, come and assist. But it came to my attention when I was acting. Another matter that also came to be a challenge in the labor relations space, it was the implementation of the remuneration model. I had no interest to start mentioning this name now, but I'm forced to. Mr. Ngeza ran with the remuneration model. The intention at the time was the remuneration model, it will cost the city around 100 million. By the time the process was concluded, it costed the city more than 400 and something million, almost $500 million.
All right, let's pick up with Chad Thomas. Chad, so that's the stream of work that has to do with revelations coming out of the city of Eguleni. Questions include questioning whether Julius Mkhwanazi, the suspended deputy chief of police in Eguleni, was shielded from investigation of some pretty serious issues that were coming to the fore. I want to hear your take on Linda Gxasheka's testimony, because she's one of the people in that nexus, one of the players there. And I got the sense that when she was giving her evidence before being engaged at length, she came across very confidently. But by the time the commissioners and the evidence leaders were poking and digging even deeper, you started seeing cracks.
There were definitely cracks emerging. She started a testimony on Thursday, which is day 68 of the commission, and it was largely centered around the so-called protectionism of Mkhwanazi and perhaps her usurping the role of the chief of police by protecting him during all these disciplinary processes that should have been implemented and weren't implemented. When we went into Friday, day 69, the testimony shifted, and at this point in time, we saw something interesting develop. Her legal team asked for a postponement. They said that there were numerous documents, voluminous in fact, that they still needed to go through. And of course, the commissioners denied this application for a postponement. We already had a postponement this week. This week was day 65 to 69. We're already in the second part, and it's the last part of the Madlanga Commission. We can't afford to have people postponing or not wanting to testify. And that's when the cracks emerged. The cracks started to emerge on the final day, specifically when they started to chat about other aspects of Eguleni relating to fraud, relating to deception, and relating to other issues that weren't necessarily just Mkhwanazi, and we're talking about Julius Mkhwanazi focused, but also focused on other issues that she was involved with within her department and within the greater Eguleni Metropolitan Council.
Yeah, in fact, there was one about a contract linked to Kat Matlala, Vusumuzi Kat Matlala, one of the businesses with links to him. And I found that testimony astounding in that the evidence leader was able to showcase a good 10 red flags that should have been picked up but were not picked up. And this is a contract that resides within her space, the human resources space.
Yeah, major issue there. It was a training contract, and just days before that contract was awarded, there was actually a CRPC change in the type of business that was being run and what business it would become. So from being a tavern or a place of entertainment or a catering type business, suddenly it became a training business. And again, it's linked directly to Vusi Kat Matlala through his wife. It was his wife who was awarded this tender. And again, it shows this very abnormal relationship that existed between Vusi Kat Matlala and senior officials of Eguleni. When you talk about his relationship with Vusi Kat Matlala, Julius Mkhwanazi's relationship with Vusi Kat Matlala, you now see a relationship between his wife and with Linda Gxasheka. So it shows that there is the symbiotic relationship between potentially bad actors on the one side in the private sector and, of course, these bad actors that have been identified in the public sector.
All right, I've got to thank you for your time this afternoon, Chad. Crisp and clear as always. That's Chad Thomas of IRS Forensics talking to us there about the goings-on at the Madlanga Commission of Inquiry.